The neighbor told them Theo couldn't be trusted near a baby. The neighbor was wrong. Mireille Beaumont had been a speech-language pathologist for 13 years. She had seen more than most parents ever would. She trusted that. She had built her whole approach to motherhood around what she knew, around what experience had taught her body to recognize in a beat. 13-month-old Atlas had been the center of that approach since the morning he was born. Theo was a 7-year-old Newfoundland who had shared the house since before Atlas existed. He had never shown anything but patience with him. The ear-grabbing, the shrieking, the lurching of a child learning to walk. He was the kind of dog people described as gentle to the point of being a little dull, which is why what happened that morning in their bungalow in mid-March made no sense. It was a kind of week where nothing was supposed to happen. Atlas had been mildly sick 4 days earlier, the kind of thing that moves through everyday care without alarm. By that morning he was eating soft food again, walking, the fever long broken. By every measure Mireille knew, he was getting better. It started in the sun porch. Atlas woke fussy, the way babies do when something is not quite right but they cannot say what. Mireille fed him, changed him, held him. Within 20 minutes, Theo was wedging himself between the toddler and the stairs. Not threatening, not aggressive. Just there, immovable. His attention locked on the child in a way it had never been before. Mireille watched from the wicker daybed, coffee in hand, and felt the first threat of unease. Theo, go lie down. He lifted his eyes to her and stayed exactly where he was. Atlas began to cry. He didn't back away, he leaned closer. That detail would matter. She didn't know that yet. She set the coffee down. He was holding the position for 2 full seconds at a time, then pulling back to look at her, directly, flat on, then lowering his face again. He was reporting something, she would understand that later. In the moment, she only saw a Newfoundland too close to a crying toddler, and her body registered the size differential before her mind caught up. It happened again 20 minutes later. Atlas had quieted, was sitting on the painted boards with a small stuffed bear, and Theo crossed the sun porch in the same deliberate way and lowered his head again. Mireille pulled him back by the collar. He turned immediately and sat beside her, calm, composed, watching the child. She filed it as odd. She noted it. She did not yet understand that he was not asking for attention. He was filing his own report. In 13 years of work, Mireille had seen dogs upset children before. She had seen the pattern: stress behavior, resource guarding, overstimulation around a crying infant. She had seen families dismiss warning signs until it was too late, and she had written notes about exactly the kind of fixation she was now watching unfold in her own sun porch. The size differential alone, the weight of a large animal against the small body of a toddler, made her stomach tighten in a way she recognized as professional instinct. She crossed the room and put herself between them. Theo moved around her. He wasn't growling, he wasn't stiff, but he would not leave Atlas alone. Etienne came in from the next room and watched for 30 seconds. Should we put him out back? Mireille was already nodding. Just for a few hours. Until he's calmer. Her mother-in-law, who had come to help that week, said it from the hallway without being asked. You're right, you can't take that risk with a baby. They had all reached the same conclusion. That felt at the time like confirmation. She had used the exact words she would have used in a clinical note. She had the training, she had the years, she had the framework that told her, with professional certainty, what she was watching. She did not yet know that the framework itself was the trap. The side garden door clicked shut. Atlas stopped crying almost immediately, which felt like proof. Mireille picked him up and held him, and felt the quiet of a problem solved. She set him down on the painted boards near the humidifier, and went to fold laundry in the next room, the white sound machine on the counter beside her. Theo was scratching at the side garden door within 10 minutes. Not barking, scratching. A continuous, focused, rhythmic scraping that did not stop. Etienne let him back in, more out of frustration than understanding. He went directly to the doorway of the room where Atlas now lay, positioned himself at the threshold, and would not move. Mireille came to stand beside Etienne. She looked at Theo standing over the sleeping baby. She looked at how still he was, how focused. He had never done this before. Not once. He's fixating on him, she said. Etienne nodded slowly. They had both reached the same wrong conclusion in the same wrong way. Neither of them asked why he was starting now. They moved him to the back bedroom that night. Door closed. He scratched at it for 4 hours without stopping. Etienne called his cousin about temporary boarding. Mireille did not argue. She had seen too much, she thought, to argue. She wrote in her journal that night, I almost gave the dog away today. She underlined the word almost. She did not know yet how much that underlining would matter. Atlas woke at 2 a.m, not crying. Small sounds, not distressed. Mireille gave him 10 minutes on the white sound machine. The sounds did not change. She turned over. At 3:28 a.m, she heard Theo hit the back bedroom door. Not scratching. Impact. The full weight of a grown dog throwing himself against a hollow core door. Then again. She was moving before the thought finished. Down the hall, the door shaking in its frame, she grabbed the handle, and Theo pushed past her before she could speak and ran, not walked, directly to the room where Atlas lay. Mireille followed. Theo was at the crib, both paws on the rail, his nose pressed to the child's face. Atlas was quiet, the wrong kind of quiet. Mireille reached in. The body in her hands was limp and warm, and wrong. She turned on the light. The color in Atlas's face was off. Not the gray she knew to fear, but a faint pallor around the lips. Hands slightly cool, breathing even but shallow. She picked him up, and the limpness was too much. Just slightly too much, and she was already reaching for her phone before she finished forming the thought. Etienne came down the hall behind her in his socks. He took one look at the way she was holding the child and did not ask any questions. He picked up the keys from the wicker daybed and opened the side garden door. Theo did not follow them out. He stood at the doorway watching the car start in the driveway, his outline visible in the porch light, his weight leaning toward the gate as if even now he was still trying to come. At the emergency clinic 40 minutes later, the readings came back. Wire surface temperature reached 187 degrees F. The diagnosis was electrical short behind crib wall, the kind of slow, invisible slide that does not announce itself, that produces no dramatic symptom, that depletes a child without any external signal a parent would think to look for. The electrical fire investigator who admitted them was someone who specialized in residential fire forensics. She read the chart and looked up. This was being detected, she said, by something. Atlas was not symptomatic to you yet. By the time a parent sees this, we are usually managing a crisis. You brought him in within the window where we could correct it without consequence. Mireille told her about Theo, about the face pressed to the child's mouth, about the scratching at the side garden door, about the impact at 3:28 in the morning. The doctor wrote something on the chart and set her pen down. Dogs detect overheating insulation at concentrations thousands of times below human sensory threshold, she said. In a child whose condition is shifting across hours, that signature is changing. He has been reading a chemical profile that is invisible to anyone in your house. He was telling you. You filed it as aggression because you have a framework for aggression. You do not have a framework for what he was actually doing. Another 9 minutes, and we would be having a very different conversation. Mireille sat with that for a long time, the face pressed to Atlas's mouth each morning. Not aggression. Breath detection, the refusal to leave after every correction. Not defiance, an alarm that could not turn itself off. The scratch at the side garden door. Not impatience. The sound of him trying to get back to his post. The vigil at the threshold over the sleeping child. Not dominance. Medical surveillance. The impact at 3:28. Not destruction. A guardian locked outside by the person he was trying to protect. He had been reading what she could not see since the moment Atlas woke fussy that morning. Has your dog ever done something that made no sense until it was the only thing that made sense? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard. They drove home in the dark. Atlas was stable, drowsy, wrapped in a hospital blanket. Etienne carried him inside. Mireille opened the side garden door. Theo came in without drama. He walked through the sun porch, past the humidifier, past the small stuffed bear on the painted boards, and crossed to where Etienne had set Atlas down. He lay close beside him, the full length of his body against his side. Mireille sat on the painted boards across from them. She did not reach for her phone. She did not move to the sun porch. She watched the slow rise and fall of her child's chest. She watched Theo's ribs rise and fall in time with it. She watched the place on his shoulder where the wood of the bedroom door had left a faint mark from the impact at 3:28. She did not say anything aloud. She said one thing in her head, the same thing over and over, the only thing that made sense to say. I'm sorry, Theo. He did not move for a moment. Then he pushed his nose against her hand and settled again beside the sleeping child. Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never ask for anything in return. If stories like this matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. She stayed on the painted boards until the morning began to gray in the window. She watched the white sound machine blink its small green light at slow intervals. She listened for the breath that, the night before, had almost stopped without anyone in the house, except Theo understanding what it meant. Atlas is wearing a continuous monitor now. His numbers are stable. Most nights the monitor does its job. Every night, Theo lies at the foot of his bed anyway, because the numbers can change and he is still watching. He has not stopped watching once in all the months since. There is a thing she thinks about often now, sitting alone in the kitchen in the early hour before the rest of the house wakes. The framework she had built across 13 years of professional training was real. It was earned. It was in its own context, correct. But it had been built from the cases she had seen. It had been blind by its nature to the cases she had never been in the room for. Theo had been working from a different framework, a framework that had nothing to do with anything she had been taught, a framework that began at the level of a single molecule and ended at the foot of a sleeping child. She had treated his framework like noise. He had treated hers like a danger. Only one of them had been correct. She's not written about it. She does not know how. The cases she has filed across her career are organized by category, indexed by symptom, ordered by diagnostic clarity. There is no field on the form for the thing Theo did. There is no category for the kind of attention he was paying. There is no symptom that captures the sound of a hollow cord door under the shoulder of a Newfoundland who had figured out before any of them that the small body on the other side of the door was running out of time. She thinks she will figure out how to write it eventually. For now, she only sits with the knowledge that, on the night it mattered most, the only competent professional in the house had been the one without a badge. The next story involves a dog who changed his behavior 3 weeks before diagnosis. No one saw coming. Theo lay beside the sleeping child, his paw flat against the rug, his nose toward the child's window.